You probably meet startups from different countries all around the world.
Yes.
And I would like to ask if you see any patterns or any different things among startups from, for example, North America, Europe, Asia, Latin America. If you can see some, different things between these companies.
Well, the one big difference we see, and I was just talking about it to a startup from Italy yesterday, is the European startups are very conservative in their projections. American investors like to see optimistic 5-year projections, and European, it doesn't matter whether it's Eastern Europe, North, wherever, all over Europe, just tend to be very conservative, and they say, we don't want to promise something that we can't deliver, but a projection is not a promise, it's a hope. So I think it's very important for all foreign startups that are thinking about coming to the U.S., if they're going to try to raise money here, they need to have very optimistic 5-year projections.
Look, Silicon Valley is sort of the mecca for startups. This is where it started. This is where the culture comes from, and I think all startups around the world emulate want to emulate the Silicon Valley sort of model. I think that while we talk about cultural differences or regional differences, sure, they exist, but the DNA remains the same of all these companies, which is that it's very informal. You come with an idea, you go hard at it, and the objective is to either you succeed or you fail fast, and then you move on to the next one. Like I said, Silicon Valley is where it all started in a way, so it's much more organized. So you've been here now a while, and you see there's a lot of events. There's a lot of sort of mentoring happening. There are a lot of classes. There's everything is sort of built around startups. Other geographies, so maybe Europe or Asia, they aren't there at that level. So while the internet is great and you can see a lot of this stuff on YouTube, or you can go catch some of these sessions online, it's very different when you're sitting in a room with 20 other people like yourself, with some very serious players, experienced players, and hearing their experiences and having them sort of conduct a session with them. So of course the maturity is there. I think the startup culture in Asia, Europe, all over the world really has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. I think entrepreneurship is very cool. I think a lot of young aspiring, students who are coming out of college or business school, they want to do their own thing. And if you look at it, 10, 15 years ago, culturally, you would ask people in Asia or Europe or whatever, what do you want to do? And they'd say, we want to work for X bank or X investment bank. But recently, now a lot of this very same people don't want to go work for the consulting shops. They want to do their own thing. And I think that's a very positive change that's happening.
There's different, early on, well, what I used to go, you've perhaps heard of Wired magazine. A lot of the early brains out of Wired magazine, they became clients, and they went on to create very successful companies. Around the time of Wired magazine, when that started, then there was another venture capital, very exciting magazine called The Red Herring, which after the dot-bomb, a number of years after that, they went out of business. But they used to have put on very high-end venture capital networking meetings. And I would go to those. It cost like $3,000 to go. It was not cheap. But they were very nice. You met a very high level of people. But back then, we would see, out of all the countries, we would see mostly Americans. And then we would see some Canadians, and then we would see Israelis. So really the largest foreign contingent were the Israelis. I mean, they are tough and they're driven. And then during and a little bit after the dot-com era, 2000 thereabouts, you started to get more companies from other countries, and then the big crash happened, and then people started outsourcing a lot in India and all that. But now more and more we see, instead of outsourcing, there's been a bit of a backlash so that the creative IP content and design work a lot of times is happening here, and the investors do like that. So, but in terms of the patterns for different nationalities for what they're doing, it made me think early on, in terms of foreign ventures coming in and things like that. The Indians, of course, they usually would have like one or two guys. I would go down to Palo Alto on Sand Hill Road, which is the big VC area, and there would be like Silicon India. They would have a conference, a bunch of Indian guys. Then me, I was maybe one of the few white guys, but they'd usually have, it'd be one Indian guy, and he'd, hey, nice to meet you, sir. And then he had a whole team of like 100 or 500 people back in India. Then they had a front office. So that was interesting. That really worked well. Sometimes I have met other guys from other countries, whether it's Philippines or China or India, and they said, I would like to establish here, I'd like to get some clients here. I said, well, you got to have somebody here. So those Indians were right. They had somebody here who could be their salesperson. They've asked me, do you want to be? Well, no, I don't want to be your sales guy. You have to have somebody devoted to doing that. And depending where your clientele, if you're going after, so it depends, is it sales or are you looking for somebody on the venture side? But I did see that pattern in terms of, so sometimes if people are funded enough, then they can come here. If they have enough money, they can come here and they'll pay for, they can have enough money. They've got funding from, let's say, a parent company or maybe a parent, mom and dad, I don't know, to stay here and try to get set. It's not cheap here in San Francisco. It's not cheap. So some people are able to do that. But to come here for only 3 months, like some people do, it's, unless you're really lucky, it's, I wouldn't say impossible, but very difficult to start your engine, turbocharge your engine to really get that racing car going. Other patterns, so I do see people who think that they can do it in 3 months, but I have seen, there's just a universe of people coming from all different countries and they all have different stories, but it's better if you are coming inbound into the US if you've got a product that you've beta tested in your country. Because we are not the center of the technological world, and in different countries you have different ways of approaching and thinking of problems, and that maybe we didn't think of here. And so if you've beta tested it in your country or in your region, the fact that you've done so, then coming here, that's really good. So then the next question is, well, let's say you want to beta test here. Doing it in San Francisco is kind of crazy, as we were talking about. It might be better to do it in a slightly cheaper area. It might be Denver or Kansas or some other city. But if your needs are really to be tightly connected with VC money or certain types of technologies here, let's say you want to be highly connected with LinkedIn somehow or Twitter somehow, then, well, this is it.
It's a very interesting trend that I have seen from my perspective. I've seen a lot of German founders here in Silicon Valley, and it seems like their take is from a lifestyle more than just a concept and idea, which is more popular here in America. I've seen girls that were doing health apps and guys that were doing furniture, very innovative furniture startup from German and from, I believe the girls from Norway. So it seems like their inspiration is from daily life, where they see improvement in life and they just go tackle on it. Whereas the startup here are more focused on apps for, such as for your pets, to trace where pets are, or for apps for social networking apps. Maybe they're tracing the success of other apps that have been successful. I've seen Airbnb for food here. That is a very interesting trend because of the share economy from Brian Chesky. So There is a little bit trend there. I would say also in Asia, India, as we were just talking earlier, India had just launched their first dating app about 2-3 years ago. Technically, this is the first of Match.com, which America has had for probably 6, 7, 10 years. And then China market is very interesting. They usually just take the model of what the business had been tested and proved and run well here, and they launched their own version, maybe because of the language barrier and the mentality barrier. They launched their own version of Uber and Airbnb, and they have been extremely successful in the huge China market. So each country is a little bit different, and there are a few international accelerator that help the foreign startups to get funding and to set up office here in San Francisco. So yeah, it's very interesting to see where we're heading from here, and definitely the diversity would contribute more to the economy in Silicon Valley.
For me, most of the startups that I talk to are U.S. startups and Chinese startups, right? Startup in Asia. So I do find there are a lot of difference if we compare entrepreneurs from Asia versus entrepreneurs here in the Valley, right? I feel like entrepreneurs in the Valley are more technology driven. So all their startup ideas, most of their startup ideas are based on certain technology. So they have some technology, and then they will think about how they can utilize this technology to resolve some real world problems. Okay. On the other hand, on the Asian market, things are different. People are not very technology driven. People are more like market driven. So entrepreneurs in Asian market, they will think about, hey, what kind of problem it needs to be resolved, right? And then they think about, hey, what kind of technologies do we have to resolve this kind of problem? So I think, it's one side is technology and the other side is business. Okay. So here in Silicon Valley, everyone's talking about tech, so people are kind of like naturally tech driven. Wow. But people in Asia, people are like always finding what's the next opportunity before they think about, hey, what's a cool technology? So people will find the opportunity first before they think about what kind of technology can be applied to these kind of opportunities.
Okay. I can't say I see any patterns, any differences between any company that's coming from a foreign country. But the difference in general that we see is things here tend to move a lot quicker than they do outside of the country. People tend to be more connected. They tend to use their network more. So it is a completely different environment than what you're used to in Europe or Asia, for that matter.
If you look at the market the way I do, there's probably only 10 countries that are really bringing both technology type products into the U.S. market and doing it successfully. The rest of them are doing it, or trying to do it, but they're making mistakes in that process. But to try to get into the U.S. market, they follow certain patterns. And the patterns are, they'll bring a person over, the CEO will come over to the States, set up an office in Silicon Valley, and then try to either get funding or build their channels and do sales. And they'll either stay from 1 month to 6 months in the process. And they'll come over on a tourist visa, usually, which doesn't work, okay? A month doesn't give you enough time, and actually 6 months doesn't give you enough time. So the pattern is they come over short term, they didn't do their homework, okay? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But also one of the biggest things, the failures that they have, is they come